Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. So today we're starting a 3-day video series, which will carry on from today to Friday because that's what 3 days is. Where we're gonna take a look at first the Eastern Conference, then the Western Conference, then we're gonna compare the divisions and see which ones are the hardest, which division's the hardest from 4-1, pretty much. So we're gonna start off with the East today. And the East honestly feels a little bit different than last year. It really does. Because I look at the Eastern Conference, and I'd say there's probably 13 of the 16 teams are realistically still in it right now. Yeah, 13 of the 16 teams. If you told us that last year, we probably would have believed it. I'm not going to lie. Because this is a very competitive division. There have been a few teams that have surprised and have just turned their divisions and conference upside down pretty much. So it's been crazy. So a few things to keep in mind is that these stats are prior to the games on Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. So when you watch this video on the 21st or the 22nd or whatever day you watch this video, these stats may be a little bit outdated. But obviously, these are the stats as of right now, and unless if you watch this like 2 weeks from now, it's not going to change all too much. So we'll get into it here right away. So we'll start off with the Atlantic Division. We'll look at just the top three teams in the Atlantic, and they're probably what you would expect. First off, the Boston Bruins, 19-5-6 for 44 points. I think that's pretty much where the people expected the Bruins to be. People expected them to fall off a little bit, but some of them had them first. They're still a really good, well-coached team. I think something that Boston's been kind of struggling with a little bit recently, though, is trying to play a full 60-minute hockey game. It seems like a lot of their games in recent date have been in overtime. So they have been struggling to win some regulation games. And as you can tell, you have 5 regulation losses and 6 overtime losses. So yeah, they've been taking a lot of games to overtime recently. So that definitely plays a factor with me. According to Tankathon, they have the 8th hardest schedule in the NHL currently. So they're kind of around there in the middle. And one thing you'll notice is when you look at Tankathon's list of the hardest schedules, you can see that the top 8 are Eastern Conference teams. The top 8 are all East teams. And I think the majority of the top 16 are also Eastern Conference teams. So it goes to show that, like, the Eastern Conference definitely has that upper hand on the West because they have a much harder schedule playing a lot of other tough and competitive teams. So yeah, Boston definitely up there. They are one of the 2 teams in this conference that I'd say right now is technically safe. Not going to lie. So next up then, you got the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are second in the Atlantic Division, actually tied for second, with a 16-7-6 record for 38 points. The Leafs have a big advantage over some of these other teams as they have the 20th hardest schedule in the in the NHL currently. So I think there's only one team that has an easier schedule than them, and that's the Buffalo Sabres. So it goes to show that Toronto, even though, like, yeah, you're gonna have some hard opponents in there here and there, but they do have one of the easier schedules in the East. So I would say that if they can start stretching together a couple of wins, then they are definitely going to be a good team. And obviously they still are. I definitely think they're going to look at some pieces come the trade deadline. Like, I think Chris Tanev's going to be in the books. Maybe Sean Walker in Philadelphia is who they're going to look at. I think really they only need one more big blue liner, and that blue line is actually a pretty solid defense. So we'll see what happens there with Toronto. But they're still a good team, second in the Atlantic. Third in the Atlantic is Florida, and they've fallen off a little bit. There are a few concerns that I do have with Florida. They're 18-11-2 for 38 points. They have the 3rd hardest schedule in the NHL. So definitely Florida. It's going to be a little bit tough here to keep their spot in the Atlantic for sure, especially with some of the teams below them having easier schedules. I do think that the Panthers are going to have some trouble here. Obviously, I've seen some talks of Matthew Tkachuk not having that good of a season. He honestly hasn't been playing bad. It just the luck really hasn't been there with him. I haven't seen too much luck out of Matthew Tkachuk. Like, yeah, he's putting up some points, and he's not even playing bad for the average NHLer standards. But for Tkachuk, it's kind of a down season compared to last year, which is kind of what I expected, if I'm being honest with you. I didn't really expect him to have another really good season following last year. So definitely I'm not too overly concerned with that. So yeah, that's your top 3 in the Atlantic. We'll get into all the wildcard teams in a second, but we're going to look at the Metropolitan now, the top 3 teams in the Metro. And honestly, apart from number 1, these teams will change probably every single day. And it goes to show. And this is where the real competitiveness is on. Because the Atlantic, yeah, it's competitive, but the Metro is where I'm more focused on. So you got the Rangers, who are number 1, 22-7-1 for 45 points. The Rangers also have a pretty big advantage. They have the 18th hardest schedule in the league. So they definitely have one of the more easier schedules amongst the Eastern Conference teams. So I think they're going to use that to their advantage. I think, honestly, the Bruins and the Rangers should be the teams that win their divisions. I don't think it's really going to come close outside of that. I think those are the 2 teams that are kind of, even in points, but also on paper, they're also further ahead from all the other teams in their division in the conference. So it should be the Rangers and the Bruins and then everyone else. That's honestly how I look at it. And this is the team that has just flipped the Metropolitan upside down. The Philadelphia Flyers, they are 18-10-3 currently at the time recording this video for 39 points. They have the 16th hardest schedule in the league. Now, for those who don't know, I am a Philadelphia Flyers fan. I am wearing a Hurricanes jersey, but I am a Flyers fan. So, with Philadelphia, I'm shocked that they're doing this well, and I think if we make the playoffs, Tortorella gets the Jack Adams. I think there's no question there. 100% he deserves it. Now, being a Flyers fan, I have a little bit of concern with this overall, with how they're doing. I am really concerned overall because, yeah, it's great. I love watching it. It's awesome. But there's that tiny, tiny part of me that's like, are we going to fall off a cliff? Or in the second half of the season, are we going to fall off? That is in the back of my head. So I am a little bit worried with that. But honestly, if we do, I'm not going to be as mad as I would be if we were supposed to be a good team. We're not really supposed to be that good of a team right now. We were supposed to just, start building this team from the ground up with Danny Briere and Keith Jones and John Tortorella, all of that. But, they've surprised us and they played pretty well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we fall off a little bit. We're in a wild card spot or just outside of a wild card spot come the trade deadline. Briere may need to make a little bit of a decision here because we have guys like Sean Walker. We have guys like Garnet Hathaway that we could trade. We have a few options that we can move at the deadline, and there will be teams that will be interested if we do fall off from where we are right now. But I'd say if by the time the trade deadline comes in March and we're still top 3 in the Metro, I think we do stay where we are. I wouldn't say we try and buy in hard. We wouldn't go out and get a big name player, but we go and conservatively buy in, and that would be how we would come into the playoffs. But honestly, whatever happens, I'm going to be very satisfied with the way we've been playing on this first half of the season, and the hope is that it keeps going. I mean, hey, why not? Why not be better than we expected now? So definitely Philadelphia, one of my favorite teams to talk about for sure. Right behind them, though, is the New York Islanders, and the Islanders can pass them tonight if they win against the Capitals, and it goes to show that every game matters. Now, the Islanders are a team that I'm a little bit with because they're 15-8-8 for 38 points. They have the 7th hardest schedule in the NHL. So that is definitely at a disadvantage for them overall in the Metro. I believe they have the 2nd hardest Metro schedule, I think. So definitely they're a team that I'm a little bit concerned about because I feel like I'm not saying they're playing bad. They're playing their way. And I've said that for years. They're playing the way they need to win with the roster they have. And yeah, a lot of the games go to overtime. And if overtime points didn't count, they'd be below 500 right now. But they're keeping themselves in there with these points they're getting. So definitely, hey, if they want to keep losing in overtime and taking games to overtime, then fine, why not? Win the way you have to make the playoffs. That's kind of how I look at it, even though there's a lot of teams that are complaining with them. So, yeah, now you move out of the top 3 teams in each conference, and you go look at the wild card. Now, the wild card changes every day. I honestly think that by the time I make this video in March or whenever I want to make this video next, I think that the East will be changed almost entirely, and the wild cards will too. Tomorrow, they could be changed entirely. Because it's so tight right now between the first wild card spot and the 4th worst team. It's just really tight right now when you look at the overall standings from that perspective. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to finish at the end of the year because you could have some really good Eastern Conference teams miss out on the playoffs. I think that really could happen right now with just the competitiveness of the wild card. So you got the Carolina Hurricanes in the first wild card spot, the team that I'm currently wearing right now. They are 17, 12, and 3 for 37 points. They have the sixth hardest schedule in the NHL right now. So, yeah, I think Carolina, they're going to be a playoff team. There are a few concerns that I do have. Svechnikov's been lacking a little bit offensively, did score last night, but, obviously coming back from that injury, it really hasn't been there, and it's been a little bit of a concern that I've had. Without Svechnikov, can they really win in the playoffs? We've seen, they can go to a conference finals, but they need to get over that hump. And then, obviously, too, the biggest one is the goaltending. Anderson hopefully can come back and play well, but Raanta wasn't playing that good. They recently signed Aaron Dell to a PTO. They're going to call up that guy from college. Probably, I think that's the expectation. But, there's still a lot of questions surrounding Carolina, right now. I do think they're still a playoff team. There's really no question there. But obviously, I do have some underlying concerns, and we'll see what outcomes of them when this team is in a playoff spot, hopefully by the next few weeks. Because they are only 1 point out of the Islanders. It can only be one win, and they're tied with the Flyers for second. So, we're obviously going to find out there, where they're going to finish. But they really could finish in the wild card spot if the Islanders and the Flyers keep playing the way they are. They could. Next up, then, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the Lightning are at a severe disadvantage. They have a 15, 13, and 5 record for 35 points, and they have the hardest schedule in the NHL coming up in the second half. They have the hardest schedule. Now, with Tampa Bay, I'm going to say this. There have been some concerns that I've had. The goaltending really has been a concern. I think Vazzy's kind of turned it around a little bit. It seems like they're getting a little bit better. But with the hardest schedule, I don't know how they're going to fare against some of these other teams in this conference. I genuinely don't. I don't know how they're going to play against the Rangers. And can they beat the other teams in their division? Can they beat the Panthers? Can they beat the Leafs? Can they beat the Bruins? I honestly don't know. And they're also 3 points behind Florida. So they, I talked about the Metro being really close. Tampa has a pretty, not like a large gap, but still a decently large gap behind the Florida Panthers for that third spot in the Atlantic. So I look at that and I say, well, that's why every game matters. And I've been saying in this video multiple times, every game matters. At this point in the season, I didn't know if I'd be saying that yet. I'm not going to lie. It's so close right now. You want to get you want to get far away from some of these other teams, because if you start falling off, if you lose the one odd game here and there against, let's say, a weak Western Conference team or a weak Eastern Conference team, and then Tampa goes in and beats Carolina, then all of a sudden, you only have a 1 point lead on them. So, you want to... Every game virtually matters, and especially, too, in those division rival games, like last night, Philly versus Devils. It's good the Flyers won that, but they probably should have won that in regulation, just because of how, tight the conference is right now. So, yeah, Tampa. They definitely have some ground they got to make up, but if there's any team that I think would, it's probably the Lightning. So, we'll obviously find out, though. They have the hardest schedule. Next up, then, the Washington Capitals. The Capitals are one of the teams that I'm a little bit concerned with, because I think they're the team that, they're showing some signs of they could fall off. It seems like the ground could fall off behind them, honestly. So the Capitals, 15, 9, and 4 for 34 points. They have the fourth hardest schedule in the NHL. They do play the Islanders tonight. So definitely they're obviously in a weird spot there. They need to win this game. They're 4 points behind the Islanders currently, so they need to win this one, at least in regulation, too. And the Islanders have been good lately, so, there's definitely some worry there if I am a Capitals fan. The offense hasn't been awesome. Ovechkin hasn't really been scoring. The defense has been good. When the goaltending's good, this team's a really good team. Obviously, too, I just have a little bit of concerns with, I feel like the way they're playing, they could fall off the wheels here a little bit in that Eastern Conference. And again, you don't want to lose. You really can't lose at this point in the season. So, next up, then, the New Jersey Devils. And the Devils, again, last night they lost to Philadelphia. That was a game they probably should have won. Yeah, they really needed last night's win, but they'll take the point. They're 16, 12, and 2. For 34 points. They have the second hardest schedule in the NHL behind Tampa. So they have the hardest schedule in the Metropolitan right now. And they're also one of the teams that is at a severe disadvantage right now, because I think they could be a team that right now, they're really good, but they can miss out. Like that, like they're a good hockey team, but they can miss out on the playoffs this year again. They realistically could, because when you look at like the Rangers, they're 18th hardest schedule. The Flyers, 16th hardest. The Islanders only 7th. So like you look at those, like the top two teams, the top three teams have arguably easier schedules than the Devils. So it's a little bit worrisome, and the Devils are going to have to show some really big adversity if they want to get back. And they're 3 points back at Carolina too, so they really need to get some wins here and strap them together. They've been better lately, but they need to start winning even more. They need to hope, too, that the Hurricanes and the Capitals and the teams above them start losing, too. So it's a little bit of a concern that I do have there. Next up, then, you have the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings, they lost a lot of ground this past 2 weeks. They have 15-12-4 record for 34 points. They have the 10th hardest schedule in the NHL. I like Detroit. I think Detroit's playing a pretty solid season so far. With Patrick Kane, it's been a little bit concerning, but I think that once they get adjusted, they will turn this around. I think they're a good hockey team. I think they're playing really well. And again, they're only 4 points back. They're not like horribly behind. So they still have a good chance where they could win 2 games and boom, you're tied with Florida. Like they still have pretty good odds at making up the ground that they just lost. So they definitely need to do it soon though. You don't want to lose a lot, as I mentioned. But yeah, Detroit, obviously too, they're at a bit disadvantage because of their goaltenders. Obviously, Lyon and Husso are both out of the lineup, so that obviously is a concern for me there as well. But yeah, Detroit, we'll see how they do. Next up, then, Montreal Canadiens. Canadiens are 2 points back of the Red Wings, 6 points back of the Panthers, with a 14-13-4 record for 32 points. They have the 11th hardest schedule in the NHL. So, obviously, Montreal, I think if they miss, there's no worries here. They had 0 expectations. If they don't finish last in the Atlantic, that's honestly a win for me, because many people didn't expect them to be where they are right now. So, definitely, they are in a very good spot, and hopefully they stay around where they are right now and don't fall off. Because, I mean, hey, you're only 6 points back. You are. And, I mean, like, honestly, actually, you're only 3 points back of a playoff spot. So, realistically, if they win 2 of their next 3 and Tampa loses 2 of their next 3, they're in a playoff spot. So, obviously, we'll find out there. But, you know, Montreal, they don't have a whole lot of expectations, so I'm not overly concerned if they miss. It's not the end of the world. They're still in a really good spot, and that means that just the rebuild's going faster than we thought, I guess. I think that's kind of what you have to look at it if they finish higher than we thought. Next up, then, the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this is, I'd say, the final team that is in contention for the playoffs right now. Pittsburgh, though, they're going to need to make up ground soon. They're 4 points behind Lightning for the last wild card spot, and they are 7 points behind the Islanders for third in the Metro. So they are really going to need to start making up some ground here soon. They're 14-13-3 for 31 points. They have the 5th hardest schedule in the NHL, and that might be what kills them. That really might be what kills them. I think that like they lose games they should win. And, definitely there are some underlying issues there that I do see in Pittsburgh. The goaltending has kind of been a little bit, hasn't been bad this year too much. I feel like there's also some problems with just the overall team. Like, I feel like they're not a horrible team. It just seems like maybe it might be the coach. That's kind of what people are looking at now. And I think, too, like, Sullivan's been around for so long. I think if they miss this year, it's possible Dubas, even though he said in the media, yeah, I don't want to get rid of Sullivan, he might look at Sullivan and be like, well, I mean, just this was a year where we probably should have made it, and we didn't play well. So maybe Sullivan will find his way out. But honestly, who knows? Pittsburgh, though, does need to make up some ground. Their power play has not been great either. That also plays a massive factor. So, yeah, that definitely is what I look at. The final 3 teams here are the teams that I'd say are out of the playoff race right now. I would say that barring a 9-game winning streak from one of these 3 teams, they are not going to make the playoffs. You have the Buffalo Sabres. They are 13-17-3 for 29 points. They have the 23rd hardest schedule. So they do have the easiest one out of all the teams in the East. I will say that. They have the easiest one of all the teams in the East. So definitely they could. But I don't realistically think they will. They lost 9-4 last night to Columbus. That was a team you should beat. So, yeah, no, they probably will not. I believe they are 7 points away from Tampa. I don't think they do that. I don't think they make it. They're also 9 points behind Florida for third. So, yeah, they're not in a good spot right now. And, yeah, they're not a playoff team. They're not. And it sucks to say because it's been like 12 years, but they're just, at this point in the season, they're not. It's unfortunate. Last in the Metro. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. You got the Columbus Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets are 11, 17, and 5 for 27 points. They are 9 points. 11 points behind the Islanders. So yeah, no, they're done. They have the 15th hardest schedule. I think honestly, just with Columbus, there's been a lot of issues. Pascal Vincent, I think, has done a horrible job at managing the young players. He's scratching David Jiricek. He's putting Fantilli on the fourth line. I don't really understand what the point of that is. Like, you're literally 11 points out now. Just try and get the younger guys to be better. All I'm going to say. So, yeah, Columbus' season's pretty much done. And then last but not least is the Ottawa Senators. The Senators are 11 and 16 for 22 points for 19th. In the hardest schedules. Yeah, they're done. I hate to say it, they're done. And I know Sens fans, they had a lot of optimism, but DJ Smith might have killed him. But honestly, it might be a player problem because we'll see how they do with Jack Martin. But last night against Arizona, I watched the game. Like, that was a game they should have won, but like, when something doesn't go their way, they just collapse. And I think that, Martin's going to need to really work on that. I think they looked better than they did in previous nights, though. They're going to still have a lot of things they need to work on. If they want to become the team they want to be. So yeah, that is your Eastern Conference. I think the one thing that sums it up is every game matters. I'm going to put that on the thumbnail that you will see when you click on this video. So yeah, that is it for this one. Thank you guys. If you guys stuck around for the entire video, I really would appreciate it. This is the nice 24 minute long video. But yeah, this is the Eastern Conference. It'll change tomorrow. It'll change the next day. Right now, it's so tight between the 13 of the 16 teams in it that I think, honestly, it could be completely different come April. So, anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Hit that subscribe button down below. I would greatly appreciate it. We will look at the Western Conference tomorrow. But regardless, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.